We will now welcome the Ukrainian delegation, led by Minister of Defense Rustem Umerov and other members of delegations. They will make short statements, and then I will answer some of your questions. Minister of Defense, please.
Yeah. Dear colleagues, and other colleagues of mine, both sides, if you can. Today we held another meeting with Russian delegation. Ukraine came with 3 clear agenda items set by President Zelensky. First, a ceasefire. We are insisting on a full and unconditional end to the killing now. Our proposal is an unconditional ceasefire in the air, sea, and land, at least for 30 days. This position has remained unchanged for the 3 months, and we consider it the basis for starting a peaceful resolution. A few days ago, we shared our documents with Russian side, but there has been no communication from them regarding their document until today. Only during the discussion today, Russians handed over its document to our delegation. Our teams will take a week to review the documents, and then we can coordinate further steps. Second point is release of our people. We're insisting on the release of all prisoners and the return of abducted children. On release of prisoners of war, we agreed to focus on specific categories rather than numbers. We agreed to exchange all for all, seriously wounded and seriously sick prisoners of war. Second category is young soldiers who are from 18 to 25 years old, all for all. Also, we agreed to return 6,000 to 6,000 bodies of fallen soldiers. Children. We have provided the other side with a list of several hundred Ukrainian children who were deported to Russia. This matter is a fundamental priority for us. If Russia is genuinely committed to the peace process, the return of at least half of the children from this list would be serving as a positive indication. The third point in our agenda is a meeting of leaders. We firmly believe that all key issues can only be solved at the level of leaders. And the leaders' meeting could be with possible involvement of other leaders, such as President of the United States. And we think that further work between delegations makes sense if it is aimed at preparing the leaders' meeting. We propose to Russian side to hold a meeting by the end of this month, from 20th to 30th of June. This is crucial for making progress in negotiations process. We've been telling Russia for a very long time, this war must end. And the whole world supports us in that. We're calling for a real work to end this war. The first necessary steps are clear to everyone: a ceasefire, humanitarian actions, and preparation for a leaders' meeting. If Russia is serious about ending the war, it will move forward on this. If not, international sanctions must follow. Thanks to everyone who is standing with us.
Thank you, Minister Umerov. And now, please, Sergei Kislytsev.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your attention to this event. We came here mandated by the President of Ukraine with a clear message of our willingness to sit down and have constructive consultations with our Russian counterpart. As Minister Umerov said, we have offered them our ideas very well long before the meeting of today. We asked them directly if they were ready to react to our proposals that we handed over to them in written form. A while ago, there was no follow-up on the Russian side. As you can understand, we could not react to the Russian proposals because the Russian proposals were only literally given to us during the meeting. Therefore, the Russians themselves suggested that we need to take a serious look at those proposals. Nevertheless, we managed to construct our conversation in a way that we can have tangible humanitarian outcome if our experts will diligently follow on the agreements between the two heads of the delegations. I would like also to note that the Russian side continue to reject the notion of unconditional ceasefire, the very unconditional ceasefire that the American president himself offered a while ago, the very unconditional ceasefire that the US delegation spoke in New York on Thursday and on Friday, the very unconditional ceasefire that our delegation has offered once again. Nevertheless, there was an agreement that the experts will continue to discuss the ideas, including on the ceasefire, that are contained in the papers that the delegations have exchanged. I would like also to remind you that it was the Russian delegation back at the previous meeting that rejected the possibility of the presence of the delegation of the United States, which is very unfortunate given the special role that the United States plays as a country, as an important provider of security. Therefore, we cannot speak about long-term security in Europe, where Ukraine belongs to, without meaningful involvement of the United States and our European partners. As well, when we reach the point of having this ceasefire or a peace deal or whatever we may reach, we need someone who is capable and skillful and equipped enough to monitor the ceasefire and the peace deal. And apparently it is the very United States that has the capacities and capabilities to monitor the deal. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Доброго дня, пані і панове. Ми рухаємося вперед. Рухаємося вперед по гуманітарній сфері. Минулого разу ми погодили деякі питання по обміну нашими захисниками нашої батьківщини. На сьогоднішній день ми досягли нового прогресу. Це так звана формула всіх на всіх. Сьогодні ми погодили дві категорії, які будуть підлягати поверненню на батьківщину. Ми погодили механізми, ми визначили попередні терміни саме цього обміну. І попереду нас жде тяжка робота, тому що необхідно буде зробити багато верифікацій, визначити всіх категорій, нікого не втратити, не забути. Через те ми продовжуємо нашу роботу і ми будемо мати успіх. Однозначно. Слава Україні!
Ladies and gentlemen, so just summarizing what my colleagues said, first of all, I just want once again to reiterate that both meetings in Istanbul happened despite the Russian Federation changed the condition very short before or didn't provide the documents in advance. So you remember last time there was a suggestion from President Zelensky to meet on the level of the leaders. The Russians sent a very different delegation, but Ukraine still was on that negotiations. And this particular time, as my colleague said, we didn't receive the document until the meeting began. And therefore, as Minister said, we couldn't provide the feedback. We need to study that. But once again, I want to reiterate, Ukraine remains to be constructive and committed to peace, and therefore we're here. And the President decided to send delegation despite we didn't understand what agenda and what documents the Russians bring to this particular meeting. Secondly, we want once again to say that the ceasefire is a basis for future talks on the substance. And here is the main difference between Ukrainian and Russian position, because Russia tries to get us into the dialogue on substantive issues like territories, like security guarantees, like sanctions and whatsoever, before we reach the ceasefire. And we say that diplomatic efforts shall be accompanied with ceasefire, because when the weapons are silent, we really can talk. Because while in Ukraine people are being killed every day, it's very hard to discuss territories and security guarantees. And more importantly, as you know, we don't have our partners here in this room. We don't have the United States, we don't have the Europeans, and Ukraine continues to insist. Today, before going here to the meeting with the Russians, we met our partners from Europe, and we will do the meeting with them after, just for them to keep them completely in agenda, as well as the Americans, because we believe it's important to have them in the scope. And the last one about the humanitarian, as my colleague said, we have a good progress here. I just wanted to touch base on what Minister announced as a very important step. Ukraine has passed the list of children to be returned. But it's very important to stress once again, children and detained civilians cannot be the subject of any exchanges, because according to Geneva Conventions and international practices, these people shall be released, they shall be brought back. So today, Ukraine passed a very big list of Ukrainian children with all the details, all the names, all the data necessary to identify them. We know where these children are, and we ask the Russians to fulfill their international obligations and to bring these kids back home to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the delegation. I will stay with the press. We thank you. We'll let you make your further schedule, and I will stay with the press to answer some of the questions you have. So please, let's start with the first row, man. Yeah.